All right, today we're going to tackle a diagnostic puzzle that, honestly, affects millions of people. We're talking about that super fine line between reoccurring depression and what's known as the bipolar spectrum. And getting this right, it's not just about using the correct words. It can literally change everything for someone's well-being. So, let's dive in.
And wow, this quote right here really hits home, doesn't it? It points to this incredibly frustrating situation where people spend years, sometimes decades, being treated for one thing, only to find out it was something else all along. It's such a powerful reminder that sometimes what seems obvious on the surface, well, it can be pretty misleading.
So that leads to the big question, right? If the symptoms can look so similar, how in the world can we actually tell the difference? It's definitely a challenge, but the good news is there are some pretty distinct patterns we can look for that can really guide us. To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to put on our detective hats. We're going to focus on two really important clues that can help us start to separate these two conditions and get a much clearer picture of what's going on.
Okay, our first clue. It's all about the timeline. Seriously, just asking the simple question of when these struggles first started can be a surprisingly powerful piece of this whole puzzle.
And right here, you can see a pretty stark difference. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule for every single person, but there's a very common pattern here. Recurring depression often shows up for the first time when someone's in their 30s, but the bipolar spectrum, that frequently appears much, much earlier, usually during the teenage years.
So looking at it this way, you can really see those two different paths taking shape. One often kicks off during those really turbulent teenage years, while the other tends to show up a bit later, as adult life is getting into full swing. This difference in timing is a critical first clue.
All right, let's move on to our second clue, and this one is all about how the body and the mind react to treatment. More specifically, the way someone responds to standard antidepressants can be one of the most revealing signs we've got.
So this brings us to this really key idea. It's called wired but tired. It's such a strange and uncomfortable state to be in. Just imagine your body is physically buzzing with this restless, agitated energy. You can't sit still, but your mind is still completely exhausted, just stuck in that depressive fog. This exact feeling is a major, major red flag. And look at this. It's wild, right? The exact same treatment can lead to totally different results. For someone with recurring depression, an antidepressant might actually bring some relief. But for someone on the bipolar spectrum, that very same pill can kick their system into that unstable, agitated, wired but tired state. This right here is a critical fork in the diagnostic road. Okay, so we've got our two big clues now. On their own, maybe they're not 100% definitive. But when we start to put them together, well, that's when a much clearer picture starts to come into focus. Let's see how that works.
So really, it boils down to this simple two-step investigation. First, you look at the age it all started. Was it the teens, or was it later? And second, you look at the reaction to treatment. Is there that wired but tired thing happening? A teenage onset, plus that specific reaction, is a really powerful signal that we might be looking at something on the bipolar spectrum.
And you know, this is way more than just some academic debate about labels. Getting the diagnosis right has these huge, real-world consequences that go so far beyond just what you call it. See, the right diagnosis is what unlocks the right kind of treatment. For instance, things like mood stabilizers are often a game changer for bipolar spectrum conditions, but they're not typically used for recurring depression. It also gives people a whole new way to understand their own life story, to finally make sense of past struggles. And really, at the end of the day, it just sets them on a much better, more stable path for the future.
So think of it this way. Getting the right diagnosis isn't the finish line. Nope, it's the roadmap. It's that absolutely essential first step that points you toward the right support, the right treatment, and the kind of understanding you need to navigate your health in the best way possible.
You know, diving into all this is a huge reminder of how easy it is to just go with our first assumptions in health. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other common beliefs that we just take for granted could really use a much closer, more detective-like investigation?